Howdy. Well, recently, a fellow gun tuber was having he did a video short, and it raised some questions for me. And I was curious. He also mentioned a book that I don't have that I wish I had, but it's a bit pricey, and I had some expenses this month, so I can't really indulge in it. Uh, my heater went south, and I had to buy a part. Anyway, uh, that fellow gun tuber is a fellow by the name of Garrett Woods over at 11 Bang Bang. And the gun in question was the Trapdoor Springfield. Now, what's a Trapdoor Springfield? Well, the U.S. government, let's take it back to April of 1865. They just signed a little document with a fellow named Robert E. Lee, who led the Army of Virginia, who said, basically, I give up. And that was the end of the Civil War. Well, uh, at the end of that, here's the U.S. Army finding itself in the possession of several million of these 1858 pattern muskets. Now, what to do with all of these things? Well, they had figured out that breech loading metallic cartridges were going to be the wave of the future. So what do? You don't want to waste all of those millions you've got tied up in guns. So what they did is they tasked a fellow named Allen, I forget his first name, to come up with a way of making these things work. Well, that was in 1866. And he did a thing called the Allen conversion, which basically created what we call the Trapdoor Springfield. Now, let me show you something. These are Trapdoor Springfields. This one is a model 1873 in 4570. So is this one. This is all that's left after a house fire. I cleaned all the guck off of it, preparatory to getting it blued and then getting a stock and getting all the other parts and putting something lovely like this back together again. But it'll do as a demonstrator for what I have to show. The original Allen conversion was in, I think it was 5870, because the original 1858s were in 58 caliber. So he just kept it in that caliber, and they made a 5870, I think it was 70, rimfire, and that's what they shot. Well, sooner or later, they decided to scale it back and go to centerfire 5070. And this is an 1866 in 5070. And that's interesting because it's marked right here, 1866. Now, that's interesting because that year was when they decided to do the conversions, and the first 5,000 were done in 5870 or 58 rimfire. This one is in 5070 centerfire, which is strange. I'll get back to why this thing is a bit short in the wood department in a minute. This one, its date here, because they're all dated right there, says 1884. So this is a standard 4570 from the Indian Wars era. And so is this, and its date is 1878. It's missing some screws, and it's missing a stock. It's missing. I got the trigger guard and the trigger assembly over there. They were a bear to clean. But one day this old girl will come back to life, but not yet. But my question was on this old 5070 here. You'll notice how the wood is chopped off. Well, at first I thought somebody had bubbaed this, but it's not a really good bubba job. What it is, it's just chopped. The wood is just chopped off. Well, I discovered that the U.S. government had surplused a whole bunch of these, and Francis Bannerman bought them up. If you're not familiar, Bannerman is the fellow who basically supplied every army in South America, and I think he even supplied the French during the period of the Paris Commune, right after the Franco-Prussian War, in which the French lost, and and Paris basically was still in revolt against the Prussian overlords. And they had started the commune and they really needed a bunch of arms. As I recall, there's a story of one of Bannerman's salesmen was in Paris when they were surrounded by the Prussians, and he made an escape from the city in a hot air balloon. That's quite an epic story. Anyway, Bannerman had a whole bunch of these 50-70s and discovered that people just were not interested in them because it's a big old heavy rifle, and what you want is something you can just stick on in a scabbard on your saddle and go out and tend to your cattle or whatever. And if you see a likely looking deer or elk or a grizzly bear is attacking you, you want something for defense, and that's what they wanted. But they didn't want something that long. So what he did was he cut all these down and created creative names for them, like the Scout Rifle or the Mini Carbine or something. And in about a year, he sold all of them off in sort of a sporterized condition. Well, this looks like one that Bannerman had started sporterizing, or his workers had, and I'm figuring it was probably done on a Friday. They got the wood stock shortened, but they didn't attack the barrel. So this one is sort of halfway in between. Well, if I find a stock someday, I'll make a likely looking 50-70 out of it. But these stocks are really hard to come by these days. And if I can find one, it'll probably be kind of pricey. Incidentally, this one has its serial number on the stock. I did not know this, but that's where they used to put the serial numbers on these things. It's not anywhere on the metal. This one that's burned up, it does have a serial number on the metal, but it's almost unreadable. This one does not. And the stock has been worked on at some point. So if there was a serial number down here on the stock, it's not there anymore. Oh well. Anyway, this is my collection of 2.5 trapdoor Springfields in 2 different calibers. The rolling block, Remington rolling block, was the only real competitor of this thing. And it was sold to just about everybody in South America at one point by Remington. But those who didn't have the money for that, they could buy a bunch of used guns. And the thing was, anytime there was a war or a revolution or something, and the new government really needed cash, they'd go to Francis Bannerman and say, "Hey, do you want a whole bunch of old guns?" And he'd pay cash and haul them back up to his castle. He had a castle in a river in New York. And then from there sell them on. And he was quite the entrepreneur, as it were. Man who made the deals of the century, as it were. But it was previous century. Anyway, just talking about trapdoors.